You know there's that one moment in a trailer that makes millions of people stop scrolling all at once. Not because of the visuals, not because of the music, but because of one single frame. 1 second. One person standing under a light that barely cuts through the darkness. Blonde hair, deep eyes, an expression that's calm on the surface but carrying something enormous underneath. Jimin. And in that 1 second, nobody could say a word. If you've watched the trailer for BTS The Comeback Live airing on Netflix, you know exactly which moment we're talking about. The camera catches Jimin standing in front of a vintage microphone, black leather jacket, dark backdrop, light hitting his face from one angle. Barely any movement. No smile. Just a presence, so powerful that your phone screen feels too small to contain it. And when the subtitle appears, 5 days, everything goes silent. But today we're not just talking about one frame. We're talking about why Netflix built something far bigger than a concert. Why that Jimin moment was no accident. And why what's about to happen on March 21st at Gwanghwamun Square won't just be remembered as a concert. It'll be remembered as one of the most significant moments in the history of music. Before we get into all of that, let's go back. Because to understand why this Netflix trailer is unlike anything we've seen before, you need to understand what BTS and ARMY have been through over the past 3+ years. December 2022. BTS announces their hiatus. Those words hit like an earthquake across every ARMY community in every corner of the world. Not entirely surprising. Everyone knew mandatory military service was coming. But hearing it officially, watching all 7 of them step away from music one by one for something they had no choice in, that hurt in a way that's hard to put into words. Jin went first, then J-Hope, one by one, and Jimin, among the last to serve, completed his military service and was officially discharged in early June 2025 alongside RM, V and Jungkook. Suga was the last, finishing on June 21st, 2025. 3+ years, 18 months each. And during all of that, the world kept moving. But in the hearts of ARMY, there was always one empty seat waiting to be filled again. And now, that seat is empty no longer. Netflix is not playing around with this comeback. When the world's largest streaming platform decides to live stream a global event from South Korea for the very first time, you know this is not just a concert. This is a statement. This is Netflix telling the entire world. What happens that night at Gwanghwamun Square is something everyone needs to witness, simultaneously, together, wherever they are on the planet. And that trailer they dropped, that's a masterclass in building anticipation. The BTS The Comeback Live airing trailer opens with something that punches you in the chest immediately, the sound of fans screaming from past concerts. Not new visuals, not a new song teaser. The sound of thousands of people who were once there, who cried and laughed and sang alongside BTS in stadiums around the world. That's an intentional choice. Netflix understood that the most powerful way to make ARMY feel that longing isn't to show them something new. It's to remind them of something that's already living inside their hearts. Then the camera cuts to JiminBlackHair Palace. Day and night alternating in a single shot. RM's voice in voiceover. We promised our fans we'd be back. 7 words. But the weight of them feels like 7 years of a shared journey collapsing into a single sentence. Then one by one, every member appears, standing in front of that historic palace. 2 shots each, names printed bold in white text. And among all of it, there's one that's different. One that makes the world stop. Jimin. We need to go deeper on why Jimin's frame in this trailer became the most talked about, most screenshotted, most saved as a wallpaper moment among everything Netflix put out. This isn't about fandom. This is about craft. About how an artist can communicate something extraordinarily deep just by standing still in front of a camera. Star News Korea captured it precisely. Jimin's blonde hair, his deep eyes, his restrained expression under the subtle lighting of JiminBlackHair Palace radiates a presence that's almost overwhelming to look at directly. The way he looks into the camera with his head slightly tilted, that's not posing. That's presence. That's someone who has been through something heavy and is now standing on the other side of all of it. Ready. And what makes that moment even more powerful is the context behind it. The Jimin in that trailer isn't performing on a stage. He's speaking directly to the camera. To you. To ARMY. With an expression that says, I'm back. I'm still here. During the hiatus, Jimin was far from quiet. He released Face, a solo album that earned extraordinary critical acclaim globally. He proved that as a solo artist, he could stand entirely on his own. But there's something different about watching him stand alongside those other 6 people. There's another dimension to Jimin that only surfaces when he's part of BTS. And this Netflix trailer, in just a few seconds, managed to capture that dimension completely. Jimin also appears in the trailer for BTS The Return, the documentary dropping on Netflix on March 27th. In one moment from that trailer, he shares that the members finally feel like they've returned to where they were always meant to be. A simple sentence. But anyone who's followed BTS's journey knows how much weight that carries. The place where they were always meant to be, not just a stage, not just a studio, but together. 7 people. A unit that's incomplete without any one of them. Now let's talk about the actual scale of what Netflix is building here, because there's genuinely no precedent for this. BTS The Comeback Live Arirang will take place on March 21st at Gwanghwamun Square, the historic plaza directly in front of Gwanghwamun Gate, the main gate of Gyeongbokgung Palace, built in the 14th century. This location wasn't chosen by accident. Gwanghwamun is a symbol of Korean resilience, of something destroyed, rebuilt, and standing stronger. The parallel to BTS's comeback feels less like coincidence and more like a narrative written with extraordinary care. This concert will stream live globally on Netflix, a platform available in over 190 countries. It's Netflix's first ever live streaming event from South Korea. The first time in the history of Netflix that they've done a live broadcast of a music performance from that country. And directing it is Hamish Hamilton, the director who most recently helmed Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show and the 2026 Grammy Awards. This isn't a K-pop production. This is a world-class production built to the highest possible standard. The day before, on March 20th, BTS's 5th studio album, Arirang, officially releases. Their first album since Proof in 2022. Their first album after everything they went through. And the title track is Swim, a song about continuing to move forward without stopping, no matter how strong the current. RM wrote the lyrics in their entirety. And if you know RM, you know every single word in those lyrics comes from somewhere deeply personal. Arirang itself, the album title, is the name of a traditional Korean folk song that has existed for centuries. A song about longing, about separation, about someone who leaves, and when they return, there's a mixture of pain and joy that cannot be untangled from each other. BTS chose that name for their comeback album with full intention. They knew exactly what they wanted to say. Then there's BTS The Return, the documentary directed by Baung Gwyn, the same person behind The Greatest Night in Pop, the Netflix film that won a Grammy. Produced by This Machine and HYB, the documentary provides access to the BTS comeback process that has never been seen before. It follows all 7 members from the moment of their military discharge, then to Los Angeles, where they gathered for a 2-month song camp to develop the Arirang album. And in the documentary trailer, there's a moment that went viral within hours of being released on March 17th. RM standing in a studio, saying, "In the military, time just passed by. But here in LA, you really feel the impermanence of time. And we're trying to find out what makes us BTS." That's not a PR statement. That's someone being honest about how difficult it is to reclaim something you once had and temporarily lost. Not because the talent left, but because time and distance had quietly changed something subtle in the way they function as a group. That's what makes all of this not a regular concert, not a regular film. Netflix isn't just documenting BTS performing. Netflix is documenting an act of reclamation. 7 people trying to rediscover what it means to be BTS in a different era after experiences that fundamentally changed each of them as individuals. And Jimin is at the center of all of it. There's something worth acknowledging about Jimin's specific position within this comeback narrative. During the hiatus, he was one of the most active members in staying connected with ARMY through Weverse. His posts, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes between practice sessions, always had a quality that felt genuinely personal. Not professional updates, not announcements, but someone who truly missed the connection with his fandom and chose to fill that absence in the most direct way he could. And when that Netflix concert trailer dropped, Jimin became the most discussed member in the first 24 hours. Not because he did something dramatic, but because the way he stood still in front of that camera communicated more than words could have. Star News described it as artist on stage. Even before there's a stage, even in one single frame of a trailer, Jimin shows up as a complete artist. If you trace Jimin's trajectory from BTS's debut in 2013 to now, one thing has remained consistent. He has always been the member who works hardest to close the distance between himself and his audience. He doesn't just perform with his body, he performs with his entire presence. And that ability to show up fully, completely, without reservation, is not something you learn. It's who he is. And Netflix, with that one frame, captured all of it. But here's what a lot of people are still sleeping on, and this is the part that genuinely changes the way you look at this entire comeback. The album Arirang isn't just BTS returning to make music. It's the result of something that almost didn't happen the way it did. When the members gathered in Los Angeles for that 2-month song camp, there was no guarantee they would come out of it with something that felt like BTS. 3 years had passed. Each of them had grown, changed, evolved as individual artists. Jin with his solo work, J-Hope performing at Lollapalooza, RM releasing Right Place, Wrong Person, Jimin with Face, V with Layover, Jungkook with Golden. 7 people who had spent 18 months each in an environment that strips everything back to basics, and then suddenly asked to find each other again in a studio in LA and make something that sounds like home. That is not a small ask. That is one of the hardest things an artist can do. And what makes Jimin's position in all of this particularly fascinating is the specific energy he brings back into the room. During the solo era, Jimin was praised constantly, and rightly, for the emotional depth in his music. Face dealt with themes of identity and self-confrontation in a way that was deeply personal and deeply universal at the same time. His fanbase didn't just grow during the hiatus. It deepened. ARMY, who had always loved Jimin as part of BTS, found a new layer of him through his solo work, a layer that made them understand his artistry in a completely different context. And now all of that, everything he explored, everything he discovered about himself as a solo artist, comes back into the room when BTS makes music together again. That's the thing about this comeback that the trailer only hints at, but the documentary will show in full. Every single member came back changed. And the question that BTS, the return, is clearly trying to answer, the question RM was speaking to when he talked about finding out what makes them BTS, is whether 7 changed individuals can still make something that sounds like one. Whether all that individual growth adds up to something greater than the sum of its parts. Every instinct says yes. Every piece of evidence from what we've seen so far says yes. But the beauty of what Netflix is doing is that they're not just telling you the answer. They're letting you watch it happen in real time. First on March 20th, when Arirang lands. Then on the 21st, when the world sees them perform it live. And finally on the 27th, when the documentary pulls back the curtain on everything that led to this moment. Now imagine March 21st. Imagine Gwangwamun Square that night. Imagine millions of people around the world, from New York to Jakarta, from London to Seoul, opening Netflix at different clock times, but in the exact same moment. Imagine when BTS walks out onto that stage for the first time. All 7 of them, together, for the first time since 2022. Imagine when they perform Swim live for the first time. A song about not stopping, about continuing to move forward through every wave. Words that feel less like a general statement about life, and more like they're singing directly about what they themselves lived through during those 3+ years. And imagine Jimin on that stage. The same blonde hair, but now under the stage lights of Gwangwamun, in front of tens of thousands of people who have been waiting for years. No longer a still frame in a trailer, but someone alive, moving, singing, giving everything. That is what Netflix is building. That is what BTS is building. Not just a concert, not just a documentary, but a complete emotional experience that begins with one frame in a trailer, continues with an album dropping on the 20th, peaks at a concert on the 21st, and deepens with a documentary on the 27th. This is a content ecosystem designed to make you feel something. And if a trailer alone was enough to silence the entire internet the moment Jimin appeared in front of that vintage mic, just imagine what happens when we get to witness the full version of all of this. The world will be watching. ARMY will be there. And BTS, 7 people who once made a promise to come back, are about to prove, once again, that they always keep their word. Just a few more days, and everything we've been waiting for it's finally real. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because coverage of BTS, Arirang, and everything happening in the weeks ahead is coming right here. See you in the next one.